My name is Paige Roberts. I'm 20 years old, and I learned the hard way that sometimes the people who clap the loudest for you are the same ones setting you up to fall. Jade and I weren't just sisters. We were survival partners. That's what happens when your childhood gets split in half at 12 years old and you have to learn, fast, who's actually going to show up when things get messy. She was 17 now, but to me, she still had that stubborn spark she'd always had. The one that made her believe if she worked hard enough, things would finally turn out right. And that morning, she really believed it. "Paige, get down here." Jade's voice echoed from outside, bright, breathless, almost shaking with excitement. "You have to see this." I was in the kitchen, halfway through making coffee. The sunlight coming through the window felt normal, safe, like any other summer morning. But then I heard Greg. "Jade, come on, you're gonna love this," he called out, his voice booming, too loud, too theatrical. Something about it made my stomach tighten. Still, I grabbed my mug and headed outside. Jade was already standing in the driveway, her whole body angled forward like she couldn't even stand still. Her eyes were locked on the car sitting there, shiny, spotless, still catching the early morning light like it had just been delivered. For a second, I smiled, because I thought, finally, after 2 years of saving, after every late shift at the grocery store, every weekend cleaning pool tiles, every lawn she mowed in the heat, while Greg sat inside criticizing her work ethic, I thought this was it. She did it. "We did it," she whispered. When I stepped beside her, her voice trembling just enough to give away how much this meant. I reached over and squeezed her hand. "Looks like it," I said softly. Mom clapped her hands together suddenly, the sound sharp, almost cutting through the moment. "Surprise," she said, beaming. And that's when something shifted. Because she wasn't looking at Jade. She was looking at me. Then Greg stepped forward, slipping one arm around Mom's shoulders like he was presenting something he owned. "Pretty great, right?" he said, smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Brand new, top trim." Jade let out a small laugh, like she didn't quite understand the tone yet. Yeah, it's amazing," she said. "I mean, it's a little more than what we talked about, but—" "Oh, it's not exactly what we talked about," Greg cut in. And just like that, everything stopped. I felt Jade's fingers tighten in mine. "What do you mean?" she asked. Greg glanced at Mom, then back at Jade, that same smug expression settling in. "Well," he said slowly, "we figured instead of wasting money on some used junk, it made more sense to invest in something the whole family could benefit from." Jade blinked. "We used your savings for the down payment," Mom added quickly, like she was explaining something small, reasonable. "Isn't that wonderful? Now we have a reliable car, and you can use it sometimes too." Silence. Not the quiet kind. The kind that presses against your ears until it hurts. I felt Jade go completely still beside me. Her dream was sitting right in front of her, close enough to touch. But it wasn't hers. It was never meant to be. "You used my money?" she asked, her voice so calm it didn't sound real. Greg shrugged. "Family contribution," he said. "You live under this roof. You benefit from what we provide. This is how the real world works." I watched Jade's reflection in the car window. For a second, I thought she might break. But she didn't. She inhaled slowly, lifted her chin. And when she spoke again, her voice was steady, controlled in a way that made something inside me burn with pride. "You think I'm stupid," she said quietly. Greg's smile flickered. "You think I don't see what this is. Watch your tone." "No," she cut in, sharper now. "You took something I built. You stood there and smiled while doing it. And you expect me to say thank you?" Mom stepped forward, her expression tightening. "Jade, don't be dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic," Jade said, her eyes never leaving Greg. "I'm being honest." The air shifted. Neighbors were outside, watching, pretending not to. And Jade didn't care. "You might think you were in control," she continued, her voice low, cutting. "But I'm better than you." Greg's face darkened. "You don't get to talk to me like that." "I just did." A pause. Then, "And Mom," Jade added, her voice cracking just slightly now, just enough to let the truth slip through. "You're an idiot for staying with someone like him." That landed harder than anything else. Mom's face went pale. Greg took a step forward, but Jade was already turning away. Head high, back straight, walking past them like they didn't matter. Like none of it broke her. I stood there for half a second longer. Then I looked at them. Really looked. "What did you expect?" I said quietly. Greg's jaw clenched. "You're both grounded," he snapped, "until you learn some respect." I let out a small laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was ridiculous. "Respect," I repeated, "after what you just did?" And for the first time, I saw it. Not just control, not just ego, but fear. Because something had shifted. And they knew it. That night, I found Jade sitting on her bed, her phone still in her hand, the dim light from the screen reflecting in her eyes. Her savings account, almost empty. They had no right, I said, sitting beside her. She didn't look at me. You know what hurts the most? She whispered. I already knew, but I let her say it. It's not even the money, she said. It's that she stood there, smiling, like this was a gift. Her voice cracked then. Just once. I pulled her into me, feeling her shoulders finally shake. I know, I murmured. I know. And as I held her, staring at the wall over her shoulder, I made a decision. They're not getting away with this, I said quietly. Jade pulled back slightly, searching my face. What do you mean? I met her eyes. We're going to fix it. Outside, I could hear the car door slam. Greg's voice. Mom laughing, like nothing had happened. But something had, and they just didn't realize it yet. Because that night, everything started to change. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared of Greg. He loved to think he was the kind of man people feared, but because I couldn't get Jade's face out of my head, the way she'd stood there in the driveway, watching her dream get handed to someone else like a party favor, the way Mom had smiled like she'd just unwrapped a necklace instead of robbing her own kid. By morning, the house was acting like nothing happened. Greg whistled while he poured cereal. Mom hummed while she scrolled on her phone. The new car sat outside like a trophy. Jade didn't come down. I did. And Greg took one look at my face and smiled like he was waiting for me. Still pouting? He asked, chewing loudly. I set my mug down so carefully it didn't even clink. You stole her money, I said. Mom's head snapped up. Paige. She's 17, I continued, ignoring her. She worked for that. She saved for 2 years. And you two just took it. Greg leaned back in his chair like we were debating the weather. We didn't steal anything, he said. She's part of this family. That's not what family is, I shot back. He pointed the spoon at me. Family means sacrifice. Jade's bedroom door creaked upstairs. I looked up just as she stepped onto the landing. Her hair was pulled back like she was going to work, but her eyes were darker than I'd ever seen them. She came down slowly, one step at a time. Greg turned in his chair, satisfied, like he'd summoned her. Good, he said. Since you're up, we're going to talk like adults. Jade didn't sit. She stayed standing, hands at her sides, posture stiff. Greg patted the chair beside him like he was offering a privilege. Sit, he ordered. Jade looked at the chair, then at him. No. The word was quiet, but it hit the room like a slap. Mom's eyes widened. Jade, please. I'm going to work, Jade said, voice even. Greg's face changed instantly. The mask slipped. You're grounded. Jade blinked. For what? For disrespect, he snapped. For running your mouth yesterday. For acting like you're entitled to something. I felt my fists curl. She is entitled, I said, stepping forward, to her own money. Greg stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. Both of you, he growled, pointing at us like we were animals. You want to challenge me in my own house? Fine. No work, no friends, no phones. You're grounded until you learn. Jade's eyes flicked to Mom. Mom didn't meet them. She stared at the countertop like it might save her, and that was it. Jade didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just laughed once, sharp and humorless. You're grounding me from my job? She asked. From the place I go to earn the money you already stole? Greg opened his mouth. I cut him off. You don't get to control her like that, I said. You're not her father. Greg's face went purple. How dare you? You want respect? I said, voice rising. Then act respectable. You don't get to preach responsibility while robbing a kid. Mom finally stood, palms up, desperate. Stop, both of you, please. Greg, they're upset. Upset? Jade repeated, staring at her. You're calling this upset? Mom swallowed hard. Jade, honey, we thought... No, Jade said, her voice suddenly trembling. Not with weakness, but with rage she was fighting to keep contained. You didn't think. You just let him do it. You stood there and smiled. Mom's eyes filled with tears instantly, like she'd been waiting to play the victim. That's not fair. Jade's jaw clenched. I'm done, she said. Then she turned and walked toward the door. Greg moved like he was going to block her. I stepped between them without thinking. Touch her, I said quietly, and I swear you'll regret it. For a second, nobody breathed. Greg stared at me, shocked. Not because of what I said, but because I wasn't afraid to say it. Then he scoffed, as if I were pathetic. You two are ungrateful, he said loudly, like he wanted the neighbors to hear. After everything I do for you. Jade's hand was on the doorknob. She looked back, eyes cold. You didn't do anything for me, she said. I did it. And you took it because you could. Then she left. The door shut behind her with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than any slam. Mom collapsed into the chair like she'd been wounded. Greg glared at me. Go to your room, he ordered. I didn't move. No. His eyes widened. Excuse me? I took a step closer. You can punish us all you want, I said, but you can't erase what you did. Greg's nostrils flared. You want to tear this family apart? Keep going. I leaned in, voice low so only he could hear. You already did. Then I turned and went upstairs. Jade came home that afternoon with her work apron still on, and her face so blank it scared me more than tears. She went straight to her room and shut the door. I followed. Inside, she was sitting on her bed, staring at her phone again, like the numbers might change if she looked hard enough. They said I'm grounded, she murmured. I know. They said I can't work, she added, voice cracking. How am I supposed to save again if they cut off the only thing I had? I sat beside her. They can't legally stop you, I said. And even if they try, we're not staying here. Jade finally looked at me. Her eyes were red but dry. You mean moving out? I nodded. Her throat bobbed. Where? She whispered, like she was afraid to hope. I pulled my phone out. I already called Dad. Jade froze. You did? I nodded again, and my voice shook for the first time. He was furious. As if summoned by the thought, my phone buzzed in my hand. Dad calling. I put it on speaker. The moment I answered, his voice filled the room. Tight, controlled, barely holding back fire. Paige, he said, put Jade on. Jade swallowed hard and leaned in. Dad, she whispered. There was a pause, a long one. Then his voice softened in a way that made my chest ache. Oh, kid, he said quietly. I'm so sorry. Jade blinked fast, and for a second her mask slipped. I didn't even get to... Her voice broke. Dad's tone hardened again. They had no right, he said. None. And I'm not letting it stand. Greg's footsteps thudded downstairs. Jade flinched. Dad heard it. Listen to me, he said, voice sharp. You two start gathering what matters. Birth certificates, social security cards, anything important. Don't tell them. Don't threaten them. Just prepare. I felt my pulse spike. You're coming over? I asked. I'm already on my way, Dad said. And Paige? Yeah? If Greg raises his voice, if he touches either of you, call me immediately. You hear me? I glanced at Jade. She nodded, eyes wide. Dad exhaled. This ends now, he said. The call ended. For a moment, Jade and I just sat there listening to the house breathe. Greg moving downstairs, Mom speaking softly like she was begging him to calm down. Jade's voice came out small. Do we actually have options? I swallowed, remembering the call I'd made the night before. I called my friend Tessa, I said. She's studying law. Jade's eyes flicked up. And she said, if your savings account is in your name, and you're still a minor, and they took that money without permission. I paused, letting the words land. We have a case. Jade's face tightened. So we can get it back. We can try, I said. But more than that, a knock at the door made us both jump. Mom's voice seeped through, sugary and shaky. Girls, can we talk? Jade looked at me. Panic and rage tangled together. I stood and walked to the door. I didn't open it. What? I called. Mom's voice cracked. I just want to explain. Greg didn't mean... Stop, I said louder now. Don't. Silence. Then Mom whispered, You're really going to do this? Over money? Jade's voice cut through, calm but deadly. It's not over money, she said, staring at the door like she could see right through it. It's over what you chose. Another silence. Then Mom's footsteps retreated. Jade turned to me, breathing hard. Paige, she said, if we leave, he'll come after us. I nodded. I know. Jade's eyes sharpened. And if we fight this legally, I swallowed. He'll come harder. Jade's hands trembled, but her voice didn't. Then let him. A beat. And I saw it, something shifting in her. Not just hurt. Resolve. I sat beside her again and lowered my voice. Tonight, I said, we start packing small things, quietly. We take them to Dad's when we can. We don't give Greg a warning. We don't give him a scene. Jade's lips pressed together. But he's going to notice. Let him, I said. By the time he does, we'll already be halfway gone. Downstairs, Greg's voice rose suddenly, angry, clipped. Mom responded in a pleading tone. Then a loud thud, like a fist on a counter. Jade flinched again. I reached for her hand. Hey, I said, look at me. She did. I held her gaze. We're not trapped, I said, not anymore. Jade's eyes filled again, but she blinked it back. Then she nodded once, hard. Okay, she whispered. Okay. And in that moment, I knew the truth. Greg thought he'd taught us a lesson, but all he'd really done was give us a reason to leave. That night, the house felt different. Not louder, not calmer, just hollow. Like something invisible had already been taken out of it. Jade and I didn't say much at dinner. Greg filled the silence the way he always did, talking about bills, responsibility, how kids these days don't understand sacrifice. Mom nodded along like she always did, eyes flicking toward us every few seconds, searching for some kind of reaction. We gave her nothing. That was the first step. Silence. Because the moment they realized we were serious, they'd try to stop us. So instead, we played along. Jade pushed her food around her plate. I nodded at the right moments. Greg kept talking, convinced he'd already won. He had no idea. Later that night, when the house finally went quiet, I slipped into Jade's room. She was already sitting on the floor, a small backpack open in front of her. "I don't know what to take," she whispered. I closed the door behind me, locking it gently. "Not everything," I said, "just what matters." She let out a shaky breath. "What if I forget something important?" I crouched down in front of her. "Then we'll figure it out later," I said. "Right now, we just need enough to get out." Jade nodded slowly. We worked in silence after that. Phone charger, a few changes of clothes, her worn-out notebook where she tracked every dollar she'd ever saved. She hesitated before putting that one in, like it still meant something. It did, just not in the same way anymore. "Birth certificate," I said softly. "Do you know where Mom keeps it?" Jade nodded. "Top drawer in her office." I stood. "I'll get it." Her eyes widened. "Paige!" "I'll be quick." The hallway felt colder than usual. Every step sounded louder. Greg's door was closed, no light under it. Mom's office door creaked when I pushed it open, and I froze for a second, listening. Nothing. I moved quickly, pulling open the drawer Jade had mentioned. Folders, papers, old insurance documents. And there it was. 2 envelopes, both of our names. For a moment, my hand hovered, because something about taking them felt final, like crossing a line you couldn't uncross. Then I thought about Jade standing in that driveway, and I grabbed them. When I got back to her room, she was exactly where I'd left her, except now her bag was half full and her expression was different, sharper, more certain. "You got them?" she asked. I held up the envelopes. Jade exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. "Okay," she said, "okay." We packed a little more after that. Nothing obvious. Nothing they'd notice right away. Just enough. The next morning, everything went back to pretending. Greg left early. Mom lingered, trying to catch us alone, but we kept moving. Kitchen, hallway, bathroom, never giving her a moment. Jade still went to work. Greg had told her not to. She went anyway. And when she came home that afternoon, there was a note waiting for her on the kitchen counter. "You're grounded. No more work." Jade stared at it for a long second. Then she picked it up, folded it once, and dropped it in the trash. I watched her from the doorway. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded. He doesn't get to decide that anymore. It was the first time she'd said something like that out loud. Not angry, not emotional, just decided. That night, we made our first move. Dad had texted me earlier. "Garage is open. Leave stuff behind the old cabinet. I'll move it inside later." So after midnight, we waited, listened. Greg's heavy footsteps had stopped hours ago. Mom's door had closed. The house was asleep. I glanced at Jade. "You ready?" She nodded. We moved quietly. Down the hallway, past the living room, through the back door. The air outside was cool, almost too still. Every sound felt amplified, the soft crunch of gravel under our shoes, the faint creak of the fence gate as we slipped through. Jade clutched her bag tighter. "What if they wake up?" she whispered. "They won't," I said. "Just keep moving." Dad's house wasn't far, 10 minutes walking, but it felt longer. Because every step wasn't just distance, it was separation. When we reached his driveway, the garage door was already cracked open, just enough. A quiet invitation. We slipped inside. The smell hit me first. Familiar, grounding. Oil, wood, something warm. Home. Jade hesitated just inside the doorway. "Are we really doing this?" she asked. I looked at her. "At this point," I said softly, "we already have." She nodded. Together, we placed our bags behind the cabinet like Dad had said. No ceremony, no speech, just leaving pieces of our old life behind. When we stepped back outside, Jade looked lighter. Not happy. Not yet, but lighter. On the walk back, she spoke again. "They're going to notice," she said, "eventually. And when they do," I glanced at her, "we'll be ready." The next few days followed the same pattern. Normal on the surface, rebellion underneath. Jade kept working. Greg kept pretending he was in control. Mom kept trying to talk, to explain, to soften something that wasn't soft anymore. "You're really going to throw everything away over this?" she asked me one afternoon, cornering me in the kitchen. I didn't look up from my phone. "You already did," I said. Her breath hitched. "I'm your mother." "And she's your daughter," I replied, finally meeting her eyes. "Remember that?" She didn't answer, because there wasn't one. Meanwhile, word started spreading. Not because we told people, but because things like this, they don't stay quiet. Mrs. Alvarez from next door stopped Jade one morning. "I heard what happened," she said gently. "That wasn't right." Jade gave her a small smile. "Yeah," she said, "I know." One of Greg's friends avoided eye contact when he came over that weekend. Even Mom's sister called, voice tight with barely hidden anger. You let him do what? She snapped through the phone, loud enough that I could hear it from across the room. Mom tried to defend it, tried to frame it, but it didn't work. Because the truth was simple and ugly. Greg noticed the shift too. Of course he did. He just didn't understand it. One night he stopped me in the hallway. You think you're being clever, he said, voice low. But this attitude, it's going to cost you. I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. It already did, I said. His eyes narrowed. You don't have anywhere else to go. I held his gaze. Are you sure about that? For a split second, just a second, I saw it. Doubt. Then it was gone, replaced with anger. Careful, Paige, he said. You're pushing your luck. I smiled slightly. No, I said, I'm finding it. He didn't like that. Not one bit. That night, Jade came into my room again. But this time, she wasn't shaking. She sat down on the edge of my bed, hands steady. I've been thinking, she said. I waited. She looked up at me. I want to leave, she said. I smiled. Funny, I replied. I was hoping you'd say that. Her eyebrows lifted. You were? I've been planning it, I admitted, for days. Jade stared at me. Then, slowly, she smiled too. Not big, not bright, but real. Good, she said. I nodded. Good. We sat there for a second, the weight of it settling in. This wasn't just an idea anymore. It was happening. Jade took a breath. When? I didn't hesitate. Soon. Downstairs, Greg's voice echoed again, sharp, irritated, like something was slipping through his fingers and he didn't know how to grab it. Jade didn't flinch this time. She just looked at me. Let him come, she said quietly. And that's when I knew. We weren't just planning to leave anymore. We were already gone. The final night didn't feel dramatic. There was no storm, no shouting, no slammed doors. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before something irreversible happens. Jade stood in the middle of her room, looking around like she was trying to memorize it. The posters on the wall, the small crack near the window frame, the desk where she'd spent hours calculating how long it would take to reach her goal. 2 years of effort. Gone in one morning. You ready? I asked softly. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked over to her desk and picked up the notebook, the one she'd carried everywhere, the one filled with numbers, crossed out plans, tiny notes in the margins. Proof that she had built something real. She flipped it open once, then closed it, and slipped it into her bag. Yeah, she said finally, I'm ready. We didn't take much. That was the strange part. When you leave like this, you realize how little actually matters. A few clothes, important documents, phones, chargers. Everything else stays. We moved quietly, just like before. Down the hallway, past the living room. The new car keys sat on the counter, glinting under the dim light. Jade didn't even look at them. That, more than anything, told me how done she was. We reached the front door. My hand hovered over the handle. For a second, I thought about everything we were leaving behind. Not the house, not the furniture, but the idea of a family that had already been broken long before tonight. I opened the door. Cold air rushed in. Freedom didn't feel like relief. Not yet. It felt like stepping into something unknown. We were halfway down the driveway when the porch light snapped on. Where do you think you're going? Greg's voice. Sharp, awake, watching. Jade froze beside me. Slowly, I turned. He stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes scanning the bags, the tension, the truth we hadn't said out loud yet. Mom appeared behind him, her face pale. Girls, she said, her voice already breaking. What are you doing? I tightened my grip on my bag. We're leaving, I said. Greg let out a short laugh. No, you're not. Jade's fingers brushed mine, just for a second. Grounding. Yes, she said quietly. We are. Greg stepped forward onto the porch. You think you can just walk out, he said, after everything I've done for you? I didn't respond, because there was nothing to say to that. Mom rushed down the steps, barefoot, desperate. Paige, Jade, please, she said, reaching for us. Don't do this. We can talk about it. We can fix it. Jade took a step back. That small movement said everything. There's nothing to fix, she said. Mom's hand dropped midair. That's not true, she insisted, voice shaking. We're a family. Jade's expression didn't change. No, she said, we were. Silence stretched between us. Greg's jaw tightened. This is about the money? He snapped. You're really tearing everything apart over that? I felt something cold settle in my chest. It was never just about the money, I said. Mom shook her head, tears spilling now. Then what is it about? She cried. Jade looked at her, really looked. And for a second, I saw the little girl she used to be, searching for something that wasn't there anymore. It's about you choosing him, she said softly. Mom flinched like she'd been hit. I didn't. You did, Jade cut in. You stood there. You smiled. You let him take something from me and called it a gift. Greg stepped forward again, anger rising. That's enough. No, I said sharply, stepping in front of Jade. You've said enough. He stopped, not because he respected me, but because, for the first time, he couldn't control the situation. You walk out that door, he said, voice low and threatening. Don't expect to come back. I held his gaze. I won't. The words surprised even me, but they felt right. Final. Behind him, Mom broke completely. Please, she whispered. Don't leave. Jade's eyes flickered. Just once, then steadied. You already left us, she said. And that was it. No more words. No more arguments. Just truth. I turned. Jade followed, and we walked. No one stopped us. No one chased us. The night swallowed the house behind us as we stepped out onto the street, bags heavy, hearts heavier. But with every step, it got easier to breathe. Dad was waiting. He didn't say much when we arrived. Just opened the door, pulled Jade into a tight hug first, then me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt safe. Not because everything was fixed, but because we were finally somewhere we didn't have to fight, just to be respected. The house was quiet in a different way. Warm, steady. Jade sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a mug Dad had made her, staring down at it like she didn't quite believe this was real. You okay? I asked. She nodded slowly. Yeah, she said. I think so. Dad leaned against the counter, watching us carefully. You don't have to go back, he said. Jade looked up. I know. And whatever happens next, he added, you won't handle it alone. Something in her face softened. Not broken, not angry. Just tired, but lighter. That night, we didn't unpack everything. We didn't plan the next steps. We just existed, without Greg's voice, without Mom pretending everything was fine, without the constant feeling that something was always about to be taken away. And as I lay there, staring at the ceiling in a room that didn't feel like a battlefield, I realized something. Leaving didn't fix everything, but it changed everything. Because now, the fight wasn't about surviving anymore. It was about rebuilding. And for the first time, we actually had a chance. The first morning at Dad's house felt unfamiliar. Not because it was new, but because it was quiet in a way I didn't recognize anymore. No footsteps stomping down the hallway. No tension hanging in the air before anyone even spoke. Just the soft clink of dishes. The low hum of the coffee machine. Peace. Jade noticed it too. She stood in the kitchen doorway for a long moment, just watching Dad flip pancakes like it was the most normal thing in the world. Morning, he said gently, like nothing needed to be explained. Jade nodded, still a little cautious. Morning. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, observing her more than anything else. Waiting. Not for her to break, but to see who she'd be, now that she didn't have to hold everything in. Dad slid a plate in front of her. Eat, he said. You've got work today, right? Jade hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. He didn't question it, didn't try to control it. Just said, good, and went back to cooking. That was the difference. Not grand gestures, not speeches, just respect. Later that day, I found Jade sitting on the back porch, her notebook open again. The same one. But now, instead of staring at what she'd lost, she was writing. New numbers. New plans. I stepped outside, closing the door quietly behind me. You starting over already? I asked. She didn't look up right away. Not starting over, she said, continuing. I smiled a little. That's one way to see it. She finally glanced at me, something steadier in her eyes now. I thought about what happened, she said. A lot. I sat down beside her. And? She tapped her pen against the page. I hate it, she admitted. I hate them for it. I nodded. That makes sense. But, she added, her voice quieter now, I'm also kind of glad. I turned to her. Glad? She exhaled slowly. Not because of the money, she said, but because now I know. Know what? She met my eyes. Who actually shows up for me? The words landed heavier than anything she'd said before. Because they weren't angry. They were clear. And clarity changes everything. That night, I overheard her talking to Dad in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to listen, but their voices carried. You know what's weird? Jade said. What? Dad replied. I don't feel broken, she said slowly. I thought I would, but I don't. There was a pause. Then Dad's voice, softer than I'd ever heard it. That's because you didn't lose anything that mattered, he said. You just found out what didn't. Silence followed, the kind that settles in your chest. Then Jade spoke again. Paige never hesitated, she said. I froze just outside the doorway. She didn't even think twice, Jade continued. She just stood there, with me. Dad let out a quiet breath. Your sister's something special. Yeah, Jade said. A small pause. So are you. I stepped away before they could notice me, something tight and warm settling in my chest at the same time. Because this right here, was what we'd been missing. Not money, not things, just being seen. The legal process started moving faster than I expected. Tessa helped us file everything properly. Statements, documentation, proof of the account being in Jade's name. Every step made it more real, more serious. Greg didn't like that. Not one bit. He started calling. At first, it was just messages. You're making a mistake. This is going too far. Then it escalated. Voicemails, threats wrapped in concern. You really want to drag this through court? He said in one message. Think about your future. I listened to it once, then deleted it. Jade didn't even bother. He's scared, she said simply. And she was right, because the more he pushed, the stronger our case looked. Mom tried too, but her approach was different. Not anger, guilt. She showed up at Dad's house one afternoon unannounced. I saw her through the window first, standing there, smaller than I remembered, like something had already started collapsing around her. Jade saw her too. For a second, neither of us moved. Then Dad walked to the door and opened it, stepping outside so she couldn't just walk in. They talked quietly, too far away for me to hear, but I could see everything I needed to. Mom reaching out, Dad shaking his head, Mom crying. Eventually, Dad stepped aside. Just enough, not to let her in, but to let us choose. Jade looked at me. What do you want to do? I asked. She swallowed, then walked to the door. I followed. Mom looked up the moment she saw us, hope flooding her face so fast it almost hurt to watch. Girl, she started. Jade didn't let her finish. Why are you here? She asked. Mom blinked, thrown off. I wanted to talk. I wanted to fix things. Jade's expression didn't change. You had a chance to do that, she said. Mom's lips trembled. I made a mistake. You made a choice, Jade corrected. That silence again. Heavy, unavoidable. Mom looked at me like maybe I'd soften it. I didn't. Please, she whispered. We can move past this. We're family. Jade's voice dropped, steady and certain. No, she said. You and Greg already broke that. Mom flinched. Tears slipped down her face. But I'm still your mother. Jade nodded once. Yeah, she said. You are. A pause. Then, but that doesn't mean I trust you. That one hit. Because it wasn't loud. It wasn't emotional. It was final. Mom looked like she wanted to argue, to defend herself. But there was nothing left to say. Because for once, Jade wasn't reacting. She was deciding. Mom eventually left, slowly. Like every step cost her something. Jade stood there for a long time after the door closed. I didn't interrupt. Didn't push. After a while, she exhaled. I thought that would feel worse, she admitted. I leaned against the wall beside her. And? She looked at me. It doesn't, she said. It just feels clear. I nodded. Yeah, I said. That's what happens when you stop pretending. A week later, we were sitting on Dad's porch, watching the sun dip low across the street. The same way we used to sit on the old porch, before everything. Remember when you used to make up stories so I wouldn't be scared of the dark? Jade asked suddenly. I laughed softly. You mean when you refused to admit you were scared at all? She smiled. Yeah, that. I nudged her shoulder. You always needed a little help. She looked at me, her expression softening. You always knew exactly what I needed, she said. A pause. Then, quieter. You still do. I didn't respond right away, because some things don't need words. They just exist. And that was enough. Jade closed her notebook, tapping it lightly against her knee. I'm going to do it again, she said. The car? She nodded. But this time, her eyes lifted, steady and sure. It's going to be mine. No strings, no surprises. I smiled. Good. Dad leaned back in his chair behind us. I'll match whatever you save, he said casually. Jade blinked. Seriously? Dollar for dollar, he confirmed. For a second, she didn't speak. Then she nodded once. Okay, she said. Not excited, not overwhelmed, just certain. And that's how I knew she was going to be fine. Because this time, she wasn't building something fragile. She was building something real. We lost a lot walking out of that house. A version of our family, a version of our past. But what we gained was something stronger, something honest, something that couldn't be taken. And one day, when Jade finally parks her car in the driveway, it won't just be about what she bought. It'll be about everything she refused to let them take from her. One step at a time, $1 at a time, one choice at a time.